Yet despite these constraints, Carter could point to a record of success as president. His administration was one of the most inclusive up to that point. It included two women, Patricia Harris, who became Secretary of Housing and Urban Development and who was also African American, and Juanita Krebs, who became Secretary of Commerce. In fact, Carter named more women, Hispanics, and African Americans to federal judgeships than any president before him. Carter believed in conserving energy to avoid a repeat of what happened earlier in the 1970s. Indeed, in 1978, Carter signed legislation to deregulate natural gas so that it would help provide gas throughout the country and wean us off of relying on imported energy. But also that legislation provided tax incentives to look into alternative energy sources. Carter was a strong believer in protecting the environment. He was one of the first presidents, maybe the first president ever, to realize that climate change posed a threat to the country. He signed legislation to make sure that toxins didn't get into the environment. He made sure the Environmental Protection Agency enforced existing environmental laws. And in 1980, he signed legislation that protected over 100 million acres of land in Alaska. Carter believed that government regulation of industry was too invasive and too expensive. So he saw to it to deregulate industry. And indeed, the trucking and airline industries would be deregulated during his term in office. Maybe his greatest successes were in the realm of realm of foreign policy. Carter became known, certainly at the symbolic level, as a strong defender of promoting and protecting human rights in US foreign policy and protecting them abroad. Carter was the individual who in 1977 signed the Panama Canal treaties and got them ratified the following year. Those treaties emerged from growing anger in Panama to US control of both the Panama Canal and the surrounding Panama Canal zone. In fact, that anger reached a boiling point in 1964 when there were major riots in Panama. It was afterward that negotiations began between the US and Panama on treaties to deal with the situation. And that culminated in the Panama Canal treaties that Carter signed and got ratified. Among those things, the things that those treaties did is they required the United States to turn the Panama Canal and the surrounding canal zone to Panama in 1999. And last but not least, it was Jimmy Carter who got the Camp David Accords signed between Egypt and Israel. Here were two nations, Egypt and Israel, that had fought 4 wars against one another since Israel's founding in 1948. In one of those wars, Israel had captured territory from Egypt, including the Sinai Peninsula. Now, under the Camp David Accords, Israel agreed to return the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt, and those accords set the foundation for a formal peace treaty between those two countries signed the following year. I mean, here's some examples of what I'm talking about. It was Carter who nominated and helped get appointed Ruth Bader Ginsburg to the federal bench. Ginsburg, of course, later became a Supreme Court justice. Carter signing or getting the Camp David Accords signed. And of course, there are other things we could add to the list. It was on Jimmy Carter's watch that the Departments of Energy and Education were formed. It was on Carter's watch that the United States exchanged ambassadors with communist China. So Carter had quite a record of success.